So this is the very first episode of my Project K, the League of Legends trading card game podcast. We don't really have an official name, in English at least, for Project K just yet. For now, we're calling the podcast Runecast, but once the actual name for the game has been revealed, we reserve the right to change our name of the podcast to more closely match the game. I say ow because I'm co-hosting this with Majama. Majama, for those who aren't aware, helps me run the Project K community Discord. I'm doing a bunch of community efforts for Project K, and I really appreciate all the support I've been receiving on the YouTube videos, but really my main priority is getting you guys over onto different platforms like our Discord, the community server, because at the end of the day, everything I'm doing here is for the Project K community. Don't get me wrong, the YouTube ad revenue is nice, but it's not the primary focus here. So please come join us and the conversation that's happening in the Project K community Discord. Majama is my fellow moderator over there, who's very entangled in the Project K community just like myself, and he's a card game veteran. For those who aren't aware, I got to work on a card game last year as global creator and player engagement at DC Dual Force. It's kind of just like a community management role, basically, but the person with the actual community manager role title was Majama, because he was also lucky enough to work on DC Dual Force. This podcast should be a weekly occurrence for Project K, but enough yapping for me. Let's jump into the episode. Thank you so much for watching. Keep being awesome, and I'll catch you in the next one. Okay, so we have 4 major topics to cover today. We've got the English announcement, everything that we've got out of that, the card visual redesign that's coming, we have announcements coming from China, and then we're also going to go over what's to come next for Project K. So we're going to jump in first with the English announcement trailer. This was our very first word about Project K since there was a leaked trailer forever ago, back when the game was originally supposed to only be launching in China. We finally got an English announcement. We won't spend too much time going over the individual game rules. I would say the biggest piece of information to know about the game rules of Project K, which hopefully we get an actual title sooner rather than later, is that the game isn't a traditional trading card game in the sense that your goal is to reduce the opponent's life total to 0. Instead, the goal is to conquer a certain number of battlefields, which might sound vaguely familiar to you if you've played something like Marvel Snap, but in reality is a bit more back and forth. There is actual combat in Project K, and yeah, the goal is going to be to get a certain number of battlefields. It's going to differ a little bit whether you're playing 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2 or 4-player free-for-all, but we'll learn more about that in the future. But first, let's talk a little bit about how we feel about that, right? That's very kind of like our first peek into Project K. How did you feel when you first started learning about some of the rules of Project K from that English announcement video?
Well, I was super interested in hearing exactly how they're going to try and differ the landscape from where we're at with like something like a Magic the Gathering or a Yu-Gi-Oh, a One Piece TCG. All these different games have their different things that make them them, and a lot of games that come out tend to just kind of lean one way or the other, but from what we've seen so far, at least, or my interest in the game at the very least is all the things that they're doing different.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, when I look at the rules and what we know, I feel like they've taken kind of like the coolest aspects of a lot of TCGs that are already out there, especially if you start including like digital card games in that realm. We have battlefields, which are a little bit like a Marvel Snap location or something like the locations from Smash Up, where the goal is to kind of capture these things and win those. But there's also like traditional attacking that we get out of like a traditional card game. But then we also have the Legend system, which is close to like a leader system from a game that we're very familiar with, DC Dual Force, or even like a hero from Hearthstone or something like that. And then the partner system, which is almost kind of like a commander. Yeah, I feel like they've just, I mean this in the best way possible. It's possible for this sentence to come off as a negative thing, but I think it's actually a really great thing. It seems like they've looked at the card games in the landscape right now and just going, hey, what's the coolest part about all these card games, and can we kind of mash those together? I think the end result is going to be something pretty special. Obviously, we don't know the specifics of combat right now, but just knowing all of that we just went over, that was enough to get me excited about Project K, and I think you feel pretty similarly, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the battlefields and how, at least what we know of how that works, and the way that the kind of game is built around multiplayer, and as well as the team format, is what's really at least drawn my interest. Knowing that if I sit down for a 4-player game, I'm not going to be sitting for an hour and a half after I was knocked out in the first 10 minutes waiting for the game to be over yeah. So that we can get on another round.
Yeah, it's good that they've built, I mean, I love that they've focused so much on a variety of different ways of playing the game. That's something that you might not instantly notice when you're paying attention to the rules of Project K, if you are in one of these bigger social environments where you're trying to play a big multiplayer game like that, in games like Magic the Gathering, if you are knocked out, you could sit there for however long, waiting for the rest of the game to resolve, or maybe you go home early or something. But in Project K, because the objective is to conquer X number of battlefields, you're never out of the game, right? You're always still actively doing something, which I think is great for that kind of social environment.
Yeah, they're definitely pushing this kind of social atmosphere, bringing people together and actually playing in the card shop, or on. I mean, we were going to play online, obviously, but
yeah.
So distance forbid. But bringing people together to sit down and enjoy the game together, rather than we can quite regularly be quite a lonely experience over like a digital game where you don't really have much interaction with your opponent.
Yeah, of course. Especially because even though I remember conversations in like the early days of Hearthstone, which is a digital card game, obviously, people asking for something like a 2v2 mode, for something more a bit social, and still there hasn't really been much exploration for like social experiences in digital spaces, which is why I'm kind of excited to dive into my first physical trading card game for the first time, because that kind of social aspect is going to be relatively new to me. I experienced a bit with Commander and a bit with some other tabletop games, but yeah, as far as like a competitive TCG, this is going to be my first time kind of diving into that. Speaking of competitive, they did, even though they are focusing on that kind of social aspect, they did try to make it clear in the English announcement video that, hey, the game is also designed for those like sweaty 1v1 games that they love, so we're not missing out there. I will say the biggest piece of negative news that came out of the English announcement trailer, or the biggest piece of negative feedback that they got, was the visuals of the game. There's two major things, two major pillars of this complaint. One is the, I'll say like the card frame, like the visual design of cards generally speaking, and people just did not like that. And then the other biggest piece of negative feedback was reusing card art from LOR. There's two major things to mention here. One is that Dave Guskin, who I'm actually forgetting his title right now. I believe he's like game director or something like that. Game director sounds correct. Let me double check that.
That sounds correct.
Yeah, I don't want to get it wrong though. Yes, he is game director and design director at Riot Games R&D. He made a tweet saying that the team hears the feedback about the visual card design and that they're doing their best to improve the look and feel of these cards. So it's nice to know that they're likely going back to the drawing board on what the cards visually look like, because even still today, even after that announcement, and even though I've done a video specifically about the redesigns, every new video I make, one of the first few comments is, wow, I don't like the look of these cards. Yeah, did you have any like negative thoughts on the way that the cards look, or were you kind of neutral on it? How did you feel? I'm
pretty neutral on it, but I think I'm a proponent of like not really caring what the cards look like, which is very much a hot take.
Yeah.
I generally don't particularly mind the look of my cardboard as long as it does what it says it does. Which I've been called out for in the past for caring a little bit less about how my deck looks when we're gathered for any kind of social gaming thing. Generally, people moan at me for being very anti-foil. At least.
Oh no, it can't be anti-foil.
They bend and they curve, but these days printing's a lot better. Yeah, I understand the negative, and I'll be honest, like even me, someone who doesn't really particularly care about the look of the cards, I don't think they look the best. I, even as someone who is a fan of white bordered cards, think that they look just a bit plain and not very evocative of anything that could be interesting. They come across as boring.
Yeah, I don't know where the inspiration came from. I assume that one of two things is true. One, someone at Riot, whoever was involved in that process, likes playing some card game made by Bandai, whether it be One Piece or Dragon Ball or something like that. One of those games, the Bandai cards all have like a very similar format to this now newly revealed Project K card frame. So either someone likes that, or it was a very intentional decision because they're releasing at least the original plan was to release in just China. I don't know if there's like any overlap there with like trying to capture that kind of style from Asian territories. But yeah, basically, I don't know why they decided to go with that direction, but I think it's probably one of those two things. But it seems like they're at least willing to shift from that. I'm so curious to what the new designs are going to look like. I'm so curious to see how far they'll depart from the current design. My expectation is that they don't differ too far away from what we've already seen, but also I think it would score them a lot of good points if they did come out with something that would look drastically different. A big concern I have, though, is I'm underneath the impression that like a lot of the printing process is probably already done in China, so there's just a chance that set 1 has these designs in China and China only. That's kind of interesting for collector's value. It's like a piece of history. Like, the cards might not ever look like this ever again, and this will be your only chance to get them looking like that, which is kind of a fun thing to think about.
It's also speculation that they'll just slap black borders on them and call it a day, which I wouldn't be particularly fond of if that was the only thing they did.
Yeah, I don't think the problem here is the white borders. I actually think the white borders look fine. Yeah, I don't think that's the issue. I think it's probably deeper than that. A bunch of people have posted redesigns, like fan-made redesigns, and I think that they're of mixed quality. Some of them are fantastic. Some of them I'm like, ugh, I would actually prefer what we have currently. But overall, it's nice that there's a lot of people kind of contributing to the conversation of what the cards, quote unquote, should look like.
Yeah, the issue with some of the fan designs is that I don't think they realize that they're designing game pieces.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful pieces of artwork, a lot of them. But sometimes they're just like, how do I use this? Yeah, no, I super agree. It is what it is. Like, even the ones that I don't like, I can look at that and go, yeah, that's a good piece of art, but perhaps not for my card game, The other biggest complaint was that they were reusing artwork from LOR. I think that this is just an extension of them releasing. Originally, the goal was to release in just China, and there was I actually wasn't originally sure where that claim came from, but that did come from an official source. The original plan was to release just in China, and China never got Legends of Runeterra. So just strictly speaking from a production standpoint, it would be silly to not reuse the LOR art, I think. Now that the game's releasing globally, obviously that decision would be reevaluated in a perfect world, but knowing that the original plan was to release just in China, I think it would have been absolutely silly for them to not reuse the LOR art, right? Because it's just like an entire region that's never seen that artwork. You've got hundreds of pieces ready to go. Why would you not reuse it, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, the answer to that question is, well, what if you release globally? But hindsight's 2020,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think another part of this is like, people are slightly upset that it makes the game it makes them kind of feel cheap that they're reusing these pieces of artwork. But personally, I think it would be nice to see these pieces of artwork again, because a lot of people have written off Legends of Runeterra just disappearing and doesn't exist anymore. And a lot of the art from Runeterra is excellent.
Yeah, of course.
Seeing it again isn't bad in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's also really cool. I mean, obviously right now there's a bit of like a bittersweet feeling from a lot of LOR players. I've seen a lot of positivity from LOR players as well, so I don't want to write off the entirety of the LOR community for negative. You and I know all too well the feeling of losing our beloved card game with our history of DC Dual Force. But if I was a Legends of Runeterra player, I think I would be really excited about the prospect of getting those cards physically. Because it's like it's kind of like a piece of history. Obviously, Riot's maintaining the servers for Legends of Runeterra and seemingly will do going forward, even though the support on that game's currently limited. I assume that one day, fingers crossed, it's gonna live for as long as it possibly can. But I assume one day the servers for Legends of Runeterra will shut down, and they can never take away your physical cards from you, So if you love your Legends of Runeterra, pry them from my cold dead hands.
Pry them from, yeah. I'm personally living through something that has already happened to me. I was a WoW TCG player right before Hearthstone was announced.
Yeah.
And that game, again, we're reliving the situation where we saw WoW TCG art being reused in Hearthstone, and people back then were like, "Oh, this is weird. I hate this. I hate these." Some cards were named differently, and some of them weren't, and some of them did different things, and there was just this kind of not animosity, but just a little bit of. There were people who were just a little bit annoyed that the game that they loved was going away, but these things happen, and Hearthstone has found immense success after that. Like I said, the WoW TCG cards are still around, and you can still play them if you want.
Yeah, exactly. I will say just kind of two smaller things, or actually I guess one smaller thing I want to add to that kind of conversation. I hear some people say things like, but it's a Riot, they've got like infinite money or whatever. These large companies don't operate with like an infinite budget. Each project has their own budget and expected like return thing. So it's easy to say like, oh look, Riot's like a gigantic company and they have infinite money or whatever. The project doesn't have infinite money. The project has like, its set amount of resources that it has available to it, and it has like an expected amount of return on investment that it's supposed to get. So it's not like they can't just pull from the sum that is the Riot bank account, right? So that's worth keeping in mind as well. I will say that there's an interesting question of what the future sets look like. If my theory is correct about the original plan just being to release in China, and that's why they decided to reuse LOR card art, I wonder what that will look like going forward into set 2, into set 3. My current expectation is that set 2 will also have reused card art, and then we'll be over the reused card art phase, because I think by that point in production they would probably be aware of the fact that the game would be global. So from there they can kind of pivot away from LOR reusing. Do you have any like strong feelings or expectations of what future sets will start looking like, or where are you at mentally with that?
I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a total 180 where we're going to see kind of slowly. Well, I suppose we're going to see like less art be used over time, but then when art is reused, if it is reused in like a correct, it would be like a celebration of something that existed. Yeah. And because they've now kind of like proved that this is the game that they care about and whatever, then the general sentiment will be completely 180 of, like, this is cool that this exists now.
Yeah, they'll like, this is a weird way to phrase it, but kind of the essence of what you're saying is that they'll earn the ability to reuse card art without coming off as like quote unquote cheap. Basically, they'll earn the respect is like a weird word to use here, but the respect to be able to do that without it feeling icky.
Yeah, I mean, Legends of Runeterra players feel hard done by because of what's happened, and so at least a portion of them. And so if the game goes ahead and it is a good game, it draws in the players, Riot proves that they are going to support this game, and then reusing Legend of Runeterra art then becomes kind of more kosher. It's cool to do again.
Yeah, I agree. All right, then the next big piece of news we got was the announcements from China. We got our first look at alternate arts in Project K, thanks to the Arcane set, which will go and pre-order in China sometime shortly, I believe, because I believe the game's releasing in early 2025 in China, so those pre-orders, I assume, would be going on any minute now. It was our first look at alternate arts. Did you have any crazy thoughts about the way that the alternate arts are looking so far?
I want the Jinx card so bad.
Yeah, Jinx looks good, man.
I hope that these do come. They haven't confirmed this because it's not in the announcement or anything, but I do hope that these are at least in some manner foil or shiny. Even though I was ragging on foils earlier, they are extremely pretty collector's items. Yeah. When they do shine in the light, and having these pieces of as much as it would hurt me to not be able to have a playset of them, they are very nice cards to have. Kind of just.
Yeah. Speaking of the playset idea, this set is coming out as you like buy this and you get like one of all of these. To get a playset, you need two. You need to buy two of them, or at least two of them, right? We don't know how many copies it is per deck, but I assume you can run at least two copies. So to get a playset of this, you're gonna need to order it twice. It's kind of sad times, but
yeah. I wonder if this is their way of kind of mimicking what Wizards of the Coast has done with like the secret layers, where it's this kind of limited time thing that you buy. You only get these few cards, and Secret Lair has this. There's people who really love secret layers and the people who really hate secret layers. It kind of has a bit of mixed feelings around it.
I don't mind limited drops like this. This is just instinctually. Obviously, I've talked a lot about this really being my first physical card game that I'm going to follow and take seriously. But instinctively, looking at something like Secret Lairs, where it's just like a limited time drop and it's alternate art, as long as they are just alternate art and they're not like cards with unique function, I think this type of stuff is like totally fine. Obviously, it's going to be annoying if you want to get your hands on it and you can't. Just one thing to mention as well, I talked about, you kind of want like a playset of this, but you don't get a playset of this by ordering this pack. You only just get like the one copy. Because of the partner system in this game where you set aside a card, having like one alternate art isn't like the worst thing in the world, because you can always just use it as your partner or whatever, or like what is essentially like your commander. So it's like, if you have the alternate art Jinx, it's just like, okay, well, that's the one I'm not going to shuffle into my deck. That's the one I'm going to have in play in front of me at the beginning of the game. And then like the Jinx that's in my deck can just be like the default art or whatever.
Yeah, so I was talking about how that kind of system is really asking for people to do like really cool like painted altars on your cards.
Oh yeah, you can do stuff.
That's like a big thing amongst like physical card games, with people like painting alternate arts and stuff themselves, or even like extending the art out of the borders and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. But yeah, I love the look of the alternate arts. I will say I got a spoiler for Arcane Season 2. I was waiting to watch it with a friend of mine, and it is what it is. It happens. I was not ready. I was not prepared for Project K to be Arcane Season 2 spoiler for me, but it happens. It happens. Yeah, a little bit sad about that, but what are you gonna do? Either way, these cards look great, and excited to get my hands on them. This was also, through this alternate art, we also found out about a new card type that we didn't know about during the first set of card reveals. We already have, like, units, legends. Let's see if I can remember them off by heart. We have battlefields, units, legends, battlefield units, legends, spells. Am I missing anything? That's it, right? Champions! Oh my god. And champions.
That's a pretty important one. That's an important one in the League of Legends card game.
Yeah, true and real. Champions, legends, units, spells, and battlefields. But in addition to that...
runes, I guess.
Yeah, runes don't count. Okay. Who counts lands? Okay, that's not a card type. Yeah, so, but the biggest thing is that Heimerdinger, when you translate his text, mentions equipment. So we got a brand new equipment, a brand new card type called equipment. I think you and I are both on the same page that these are probably just going to be something similar to artifacts or enchantments.
Yeah. So I ran it through a different translator and got gear rather than equipment. So I'm wondering if, because equipment kind of insinuates that it like attaches to something kind of like a magic. So I'm wondering, it's probably just something similar to like an artifact. We've seen cards that seemingly are in play but not part of like the base of the battlefield. They're kind of like off to the side.
Yeah, kind
of.
So
I imagine that's what we're seeing there.
Yeah. I imagine that's probably accurate. Those cards also had a slightly different frame for whatever it's worth. I remember seeing them, and it just like visually looked different to other cards. So I assume that that was probably gear or equipment, whatever they end up calling it in English. So yeah, that's kind of cool. For whatever it's worth, we also got the Chinese social pages going up. So if you want to scout those, you can scout those. And then we also got a Chinese announcement trailer coming out of like a fictional card shop that I thought was really cute. I actually really liked that trailer. That was really cool.
I want to go to that card shop.
Yeah, that card shop seems based. Bunch of League of Legends stuff. I like the idea of a fictional card shop existing just around League of Legends aesthetics, despite the fact that there is, of course, no League of Legends card game yet. It's kind of a funny concept. Yeah, any big takeaways you had from this trailer? I honestly just thought it was like aesthetically really cool. I don't think we learned too much that was too crazy.
Yeah, I don't think we've learned a whole lot. They definitely are kind of pushing this angle that this game will be a competitive game at the very least. They had an announcer, like a competitive game announcer, like on the trailer to kind of like pretend fake like announce a tournament that was going on in the so they're kind of pushing this idea that this is definitely a competitive game as well as a social multiplayer game.
Yeah, I think they're very much trying to strike that middle ground, and I think that they're, that's definitely an aesthetic they're going to want to lean into. They talked about that a lot in the English trailer as well, leaning into both competitive and social aspects of the game, and then also they seem to be prioritizing organized play a lot. So yeah, I definitely think they're leaning into that competitive aesthetic, like you were talking about. I will say, just while we're talking about the Chinese announcement trailer, I want to mention the Black Room. The Black Room where none of the cards were resolving correctly and everything, none of the board states made any sense. I don't know what was going on filming that day. They just didn't have a guy around to double check the board states, but there was like weird stuff going on where some people had 6 mana and some people had 2 mana on the beginning of the game. It was just, bro, it's just, that whole room was like so broken. It was so weird, but
like
yeah.
when we're kind of scanning the board stage, trying to understand the game rules before they're out, and they just completely throw a spanner in the works by making it just not the rules.
Yeah, like right now, I have no idea whether your partner can be a unit or not, because we saw the River Shaper in a partner slot. But also that partner slot, River Shaper, was in the Black Room. So I don't know, is the Black Room's just not canon? I don't know what's going on in that Black Room. Something weird.
The Black Room is not canon.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some weird stuff going on in there. But yeah, honestly, that was the news wrap up for most of the week. But what is to come? We have a decent number of things to look forward to right now. One is that I'll quickly mention, during the Chinese trailer, Dave Guskin mentioned that Set 1 is done. Everything for Set 1 is complete, so I imagine we'll start getting some announcements in other regions as soon as they have partners for their printing stuff that they have going on, and then their organized play stuff. And then they're already working on Set 2. Specifically, they said the second set of champions, but I assume that means Set 2. So yeah, that's pretty cool that they're working on Set 2 already. And the next big thing we have to look forward to is the Macau TFT Open, which will be the first time that people get their hands on the game. Even though it's a TFT event, Project K will be playable at that event. I will have people reporting back game rules and things like that, and maybe we'll even get some more information out of there. Hopefully that will have enough information that we'll be able to start playing the game on Tabletop Simulator, which the Tabletop Simulator mod is live. There's a video up on my YouTube channel if you're curious about that information. And then also you can find games, once we have enough information, you'll be able to find games in our in our Discord. I was gonna say our Tabletop Simulator server, but that doesn't make any sense now, does it? So yeah, any big expectations?
Be a Tabletop Simulator server soon.
Yeah, true, it will be. Any big expectations or hopes coming into the TFT event that is less than 24 hours away by the time that this video goes up?
That they spoil the whole set, so that we can play with absolutely every card. Unlikely, obviously, but just getting an actual beat on what is going on, like the actual rules. There's lots of speculation. I mean, I think I've got my theory, which I'm like 98% on.
The mana theory.
So yeah, like the idea that when paying for a thing, the runes return back to the rune deck. So that's something that I'm 98% sure on. I just want to have it confirmed so that I don't need to argue that point or defend my point, I guess. Not that I'm vitriolic about it. What I'm also interested in is, I mean, I don't know if this is something they'll confirm, but like we know there's almost like 300 cards in the set.
Yeah, 298.
So I'm just wondering what the kind of like makeup of that is. What we're looking at. Are we looking at cards that are like alternates, or alternates considered as part of that? Or like, foil versions or whatever that are special? Just like, I want to know if that is actually 298 distinct cards.
I assume it is. There's a lot of design space, or at the very least, if it's not, there's probably like, 250 of them are, or whatever. Like, there has to be a decent number of cards in this type of game, because A, you have 6 colors to cover that you need to have like a decent foundation for, right? There's a lot of stuff to fill in there, but you need, obviously you need a good number of units, you need a good number of champions, you need a good number of spells in whatever archetypes are relevant, but also you need a good pool of battlefields. We know that at least in 4-player games, battlefields, there's 8 battlefields to score before you win, at the very least. We might be misinterpreting exactly how that works, but at the very least, someone had 8 battlefields when they won the game. So for there to be, and I assume the stack that you bring to the table has to be at least 8 then, right? Or else that math doesn't work out, right? So you need at least 8 battlefields in your quote-unquote stack. So to make the decisions of which battlefields you bring to the table interesting, there needs to be a relatively decent pool of battlefields as well. And a decent number of battlefields that plug into different archetypes, right? You want your aggressive decks to have battlefields that make sense for them. You want your ramp decks to have battlefields that make sense for them. So basically there's a lot of space to cover in this game, so they do need a decent number of cards. And 298 seems like a really good a really good starting number, I think, for the base set.
Yeah, if the set code FN is it FND?
It's FDN,
FND, right?
I think. Oh no, it's
FDN.
Well, now I need to know. Okay, because now you said it. I need to go check. You keep yapping.
Well, if that is to believe that is like a foundations, like similar to Might of the Gatherer's most recent set, the whole point is to kind of set the foundation for what is going forward. I expect them to, give us a good range of everything, and then kind of focus on ideas going forward, like little more niche things, as, set ones tend to be for any kind of trading card game.
Yes, for the record, it is FND. It'd just be so funny if the first set's called Foundations. That would be, it'd be so perfect.
It's going to be called Fun Destroyers.
Nice. Yeah, no, I think that regardless of what the name of the base set is, it will be very much the foundations of the game. So it's important that they get it right, and I'm confident. I think they've cooked up here. Even just looking at the Volibear math and knowing how the mana system in the game works, it's like they've thought a lot about this system, especially if the recycling theory is true, where if a unit or a spell or whatever has a specific icon on it, it means you need to put that mana back into your mana deck. The math on Volibear and the way that it scales, it's just like they've thought a lot about this system, and yeah, so I think that they know what they're doing over there. They got some smart people working on the game. I will say the biggest question I have going into Macau, and the biggest thing that I want answered, is combat and battlefields and conquering battlefields and how all that works. Because I've played games with locations in them, and I like Smash Up in Marvel Snap, so I know what conquering a location should look like. But they've got a weird blend here where people are attacking and people are dealing damage and people are actually fighting at these locations, or at these battlefields, I should say. And I don't know what that will look like. I'm really curious to know what that'll look like, and I hopefully will find out at the Macau event, because I want to know now.
You know what, actually, I'm just going to tack on something at the end there. I want to know what the face down card's all about.
Oh yeah, we saw this one clip in the English trailer where there's just a face down card at a battlefield. Why is there a face down card at a battlefield? New card type unlocked. It's a trap.
He's just hiding. It's just a guy. He's just hiding in bush.
Yeah.
Ready to pounce.
I think it's, people have been speculating about what that is, and some people have mentioned that, maybe it's a trap or something, but I think it's really hard to do traps in a game where you're spending mana to play them. In a physical game. In a digital game, it's a bit different, right? But like, let's say
it is,
they're all zero cost?
Like a generic thing.
I don't know. Yeah, who knows?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, this is just speculation, obviously. It'd be similar to like a secret, or not? Because secrets even all cost different in Hearthstone. So
yeah, secrets cost different in Hearthstone, but it's tied to the class, so that when you cast a mage secret, there's never a question of how much it costs, or you can never deduce information about like, oh, they must have played this secret because they spent 4 mana to do it. Because if they're playing a mage secret, it has to be a 3 mana card. Or if they're playing a rogue secret, it has to be a 2 mana card. I think. I
guess the closest thing, it would be Morph in Magic, where you just pay 3 regardless of what creature it is, and then the cost to flip is then paid later.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we will know soon enough, hopefully. I think we'll wrap it up there. That's pretty much all the information we got this week regarding Project K. I think it's safe to say that the two of us are very excited. If you are excited about Project K, please come join us in the Project K community Discord server that we've been running. There is over 600 of you in there already, which is absolutely awesome. So we would love it if you came and joined us. Mage Elmer, say goodbye to the people, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye, people.